Okay, I'm going to get us started. This is our first Cascadia webinar of 2024. We're very excited to have you all here with us. I'm going to go through some housekeeping items first, so that will give a few more folks time to join, but it looks like we have quorum and we're excited to get started with our panelists today. By way of introduction, my name is Emily Fletcher and I work with the Cascadia Innovation Corridor in support of our aspiration to make Cascadia, which stretches from Vancouver, BC to Portland, Oregon, the world's first sustainable mega region. So first to those housekeeping items, this webinar is being recorded and we'll post the recording on the Cascadia website and share it out with this group next week. So you're welcome to rewatch or share it with folks in your network. Our moderator will pose a few questions to our panelists and we will have time at the end for audience questions. So please put your questions in the Q&A section of Zoom and we should have time to get to those. So now to our program. I am thrilled that we're joined here today with economic development leaders and Indigenous innovators who will discuss cross-border market opportunities for entrepreneurs in the Cascadia region. And first, I want to introduce Consul and Senior Trade Commissioner Akiko Onizuka, who is joining us from the Canadian Consulate in Seattle and will provide an introduction to today's webinar.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Emily. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm speaking to you from Seattle, the traditional territories of the coastal Salish peoples. I'm very honored to open this discussion today, as Canada is absolutely committed to deliver on our individual and collective responsibilities to support reconciliation with the Indigenous peoples communities. Here at the Canadian Consulate in Seattle, we do our part of this process by supporting Indigenous-owned companies and their business development efforts in the U.S. We are lucky to be in the Pacific Northwest region, or Cascadia, as we share our values and goals with local stakeholders to support inclusive trade between the U.S. and Canada, and together advance economic development and innovation agenda for Indigenous or tribe business communities. The forum like this today is instrumental in creating concrete way to forge collaboration among us across the border and seek innovative ideas in doing so. Canadian Consulate looks forward to continuing to be part of this group and support this important dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Consul Onizuka. We appreciate you being here with us today. So next, I will turn it over to Bill Tam, who is moderating today's discussion. Bill is a lifelong entrepreneur and preeminent leader of the BC tech sector, and he co-founded the Digital Technology Supercluster, which is a federal government initiative to drive R&D collaboration among industry leaders, small and medium enterprises, and post-secondary institutions. And he is also a member of the Cascadia Innovation Corridor Steering Committee. So I will turn it over to you, Bill, to get the conversation started.
Well, thanks so much, Emily. It's a real honor to be here, and it's great to know that this is the first webinar that we're hosting in 2024. I think we've got an exciting panel today for everyone. It really is an example of the cross-border collaboration that we've been trying to pursue for many years at the Cascadia Innovation Corridor. I'm excited to be joined today by Diane, Nico, Logan, and David. And maybe we can start with some introductions. Maybe just at the forefront, I'll just say that Diane and Nico were the architects of a groundbreaking collaboration, which invited a cohort of Canadian Indigenous businesses to take part in a business accelerator program really designed to advance their opportunities in the US market. And maybe where I'd like to start is to ask Diane, who I think is really the principal leader in this initiative, to maybe share a little bit about herself and the background on the Northwest Innovation Resource Center. Diane?
Sure, thank you, Bill, and Emily and Akiko. So the Northwest Innovation Resource Center is a nonprofit organization that was started in 2010 specifically by a number of individuals in Northwest Washington who really saw the need for an organization to help early stage entrepreneurs in the area. And what we believed was by helping the small businesses between Seattle and the Canadian border, we would be enriching the economy of the whole region. And I think that started to pan out. So I think that just to get on my own personal soapbox a little bit, my background is I've been with large companies and worked in metropolitan areas my entire business career. And when I moved to the Northwest, it was eye-opening to be exposed to the smaller regional towns and cities and understand the real innovative spirit and hard work and creativity that exists there that we kind of lose track of. And by the CIC being able to help spotlight that and also be able to talk about the cross-border opportunities there, which we'll talk about more in a bit, I think it really adds to not only the culture, but the opportunity for the workforce and the population in the area. So it's great to be part of that whole movement.
Well, thank you so much for all your hard work, Diane, and for joining us on the panel today. Maybe next, what I'd like to do is turn to Nico, who's your partner in crime on the Canadian side of the border, to introduce himself. Nico?
Great. Well, thank you so much, Bill. And for those of you who haven't met me yet, which is probably most of you, I am Trade and Invest British Columbia's representative here in the Pacific Northwest. I've been in this role for around 2 years now. And as a way of personal background, I am originally from Uruguay and spent the last 15 years between China, Silicon Valley, and now the Pacific Northwest. So this gave me a different perspective of the changing world we live in. And those are the skills with which I came into this role. And going a bit deeper into the program, into the First Nations accelerator that we execute for the first time last year in partnership with Diane. First of all, we did this because supporting First Nations entrepreneurs is a priority for the BC government, and it's a priority because it corrects historic injustices and because it's also good business. It helps grow communities that need the support, and it helps highlight business that sometimes, like in the case of adaptive homes and Animikii, have great solutions that are greatly valued by customers. So here in the US, our priority is to translate. Sorry if you hear some screaming, I have my daughter in the background. We unfortunately had daycare closure today. But here in the Pacific Northwest, what we try to do in the US Trade and Investment Representative Office is translating into specific actions the priorities of the government. And this program, the accelerator, is one of those specific actions. I've been an entrepreneur myself, and I know that action speaks louder than words, right? So we don't want to just talk the talk. We want to walk the walk and create tools like this program that help entrepreneurs like David and Logan and others who are participants of this first and second edition as well. So yeah, that's kind of the background of this project.
Well, thanks so much, Nico, for all your hard work and for joining us in the panel today. So next, I have the pleasure of introducing Logan and David, who are the benefactors of this program. Maybe I'll start with Logan for a quick introduction on adaptive homes.
Hanse, thank you. Yeah, my name is Logan Ashley. I'm an owner of Adaptive Homes. I'm Cree from the Driftpile First Nations in Northern Alberta and Treaty 8. I live in Revelstoke, BC, and we have been expanding into the United States as well. Adaptive Homes is a high-performance manufactured builder, and we're leading the way to creating a way that can create access to the furthest reaches of North America with unparalleled comfort and sustainability. And we build homes to enrich people's lives.
It's great to have you. Thanks so much, Logan. And then last but not least, David, thank you for joining us today. Maybe you can share a little bit about your background and Animikii.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bill. Talofa, everyone. My name is David Pereira, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Animikii, an Indigenous technology company based in Victoria, British Columbia. Myself, I'm of Samoan Indigenous heritage, born and raised in New Zealand, And I want to acknowledge that American Samoa is a US territory, which is why you'll find a lot of Samoan presence of our people within the US. So it's very relevant to me in terms of living in Canada and looking at cross-border trade within the US, where actually all my immediate family have lived now for the last 25 years. So I'm joining you today from the land of the Silts people here in Kelowna, British Columbia. Now, at Animikii, we're a technology services and product company focused on providing digital data and software solutions built on a foundation of data sovereignty and our platform, Niwin. Now, Niwin, our application and solutions platform, acts as a force multiplier, enabling us to create high-quality solutions that effectively meet our clients' needs. And we take pride in being a social enterprise and the first Indigenous B Corp in Canada, committed to upholding our social responsibilities and supporting Indigenous communities and their allies through technology. Today, I'm excited to share insights from our participation in the accelerator, also highlighting the importance of cross-border market opportunities and the pivotal role of Indigenous entrepreneurs in the Cascadia region. I'm sure, like many of you watching, the question and work ahead is, how do we better facilitate these cross-border market opportunities? And I look forward to learning and growing together with you all today. Thanks, Bill.
Well, thanks so much, David. That's a great segue into the panel discussion that we can now have. I think maybe what I'd like to do is first turn to Nico, because I think you highlighted, Nico, for us some of the priorities for the government of BC around supporting reconciliation and the Indigenous agenda. And I think what David just shared is there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in Indigenous-led businesses. Can you just highlight for us maybe the trade and investment view, what the impetus was for designing this program, and some of the areas that you hope to achieve as a result of it?
Well, first of all, I think that it's important to design programs that are specific to the First Nations community. And something that we wanted to highlight is that besides what the stereotype can be, sometimes there are companies in the Indigenous community that go well beyond what you would think are traditional industries for these communities, right? Or what the stereotype would be around this. So companies like Adaptive Homes and Animikii are, I think, are great examples of how strong and talented the community is. And we've been working with them in different fields, right? And in different activities. For example, not only in the accelerator itself, but also in campaigns and conferences, trade shows like RES, the Reservation Economic Summit that takes place in the US. And that is an enormous show that has tremendous opportunities for participating companies. We try to create a virtuous circle between those three things, right? Between the accelerator, between opportunities like the trade shows, and between the industrial strength that the First Nations community have.
Thanks, Nico. And maybe Diane, if you could share your perspective, because I understood that you've been doing these sorts of programs for some time. And so can you share the impetus for the Indigenous specific program that you designed here?
Sure. I will say that since early days of the NWIRC, we've really had an affinity for trying to increase our ability and capacity to work with the innovators from especially Southern BC. There's a large overlap in the industry sectors that are prominent on both sides of the border: the agriculture, the maritime, the manufacturing, and clean tech focus. And the innovation that's being supported in Canada and BC specifically is very, it's envious to us to see how great it is. So we also, I think, on both sides of the border have an ability and success in looking at new technologies and how they can enable our traditional or our stronger sectors to really be more competitive. So adding, right now the big deal is adding AI to all of these, but that's nothing new to really the industries, and adding ways of having IoT and as you well know, the whole data analytics aspect of what that can do for predictive activity. So when Nico arranged for a meeting with us and the Ministry of Economic Development at the last 2019 CIC conference in Semiahmoo. It really led to the discussion of doing an accelerator to help the Canadian businesses expand into the US market. And that then led to us focusing on the Indigenous owned Canadian businesses as a special concentration for that accelerator. The challenges of small businesses for doing work across the border are pretty significant. If you have a large business, you have quite a few resources you can call upon, but a small business, as David and Logan have found, you kind of have to do it all yourself, figure out how to get through those barriers. So having an opportunity to provide some assistance and some information and share connections with individuals through the accelerator, I think was really great. It helps us function as one virtual region and not think of ourselves so much as two regions that are trying to figure out how to work together, but more a seamless way of working as a whole, which is much better for our economy all over and the workforce, I think, on the entire region.
Well, thanks, Diane. That's an amazing story of how fortuitous it was for you and Nico and others to meet at a Cascadia Innovation Corridor event and then spawn this idea out of that. I think that sort of serendipity and the collaboration that ensues because people have common purpose is an amazing outcome. So congrats on that. And maybe what I can do is like turn to David and Logan, because the key question is for all of the folks that are in the audience that are also Indigenous entrepreneurs, why did you choose to be part of this program? What was it that you were looking for? And maybe David, I could start with you.
Sure, thanks, Bill. Probably before I answer, I'll set some context. Like in terms of the Cascadia Innovation Corridor, British Columbia, Washington State, and Oregon State. As if we go back and we look back in history, that the First Nation communities and Native American tribes were facilitating trade up and down the region very effectively, very developed, and even had developed their own trade languages. So I think a lot of looking forward, we should also look back at knowledge and experience to be really prudent about what that is. And so part of ourselves participating in this accelerator was also bringing a sense of like, how do we bring that knowledge through? How do we find better participation from Indigenous entrepreneurs? But how do we have organizations like yourselves here at Cascadia Innovation Corridor, governments of British Columbia and Canada and Washington and Oregon State recognize that and bring that and help to support and lift other Indigenous entrepreneurs and communities and what we can learn there, and really bringing that sense of economic opportunity and trade among these regions. We always say at Animikii that we have the imaginary border, the medicine line. And we know that a lot of these communities, they span their traditional lands and people span these borders. And so bringing them and connecting them together is also one of our aims. How do we connect First Nations, Indigenous people of Canada to the Native American communities and bring them back to their brothers and sisters? And together we're stronger. Sorry, I'll just setting some context.
No, not at all. That was great. That was awesome context.
Yeah, so we really chose to participate in the Accelerate program to really leverage its resources and networking opportunities, like that align with our strategic goals. And the Accelerator, supported in partnership with the Canadian Trade Commission and Consular Services, is really key for us, as they directly support Canadian companies, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, that are looking to and currently are exporting. Now, exporting for a company like Animikii means making the smart choices. And Diane alluded there to like the size of our business and the growth and what our aspirations are. And resources need to be managed responsibly. So we not only provide employment for 36 team members and their families, but we have the opportunity through sustainable growth initiatives to employ more people and also bring more Indigenous, Native American folks into technology, which is key for us. Now, this program offered us direct access to an ecosystem of like-minded entrepreneurs and potential partners, which is crucial for fostering innovation and scaling our impact as an organization, especially within the US region, and even more so the Cascadia Innovation Corridor. We're headquartered in Victoria, British Columbia, so it makes a lot of sense for us to increase our book of business and impact into this Cascadia mega region of British Columbia, Washington, Oregon state. It also means that if we take on work and take on projects, we can better support these and provide good value and effective solutions because we're close. Internet these days, we can come in from everywhere. But for us in working with Indigenous Native American communities and communities in general, non-Indigenous as well, the ability to be in person and support this work and really provide high quality outputs is really important to us. Yeah, I'll stop there. But ultimately the decision to join the accelerator was driven by our commitment to growth, learning, and the opportunity to share and gain insights in a collaborative, supportive environment and safe. And for Indigenous, safe and supportive is really important.
There's a lot there. Thank you, David. That's great. How about you, Logan? Like, what was the impetus for Adaptive to get involved in this program?
Yeah, thank you. Very much like David there, it was about networking and growth and acknowledging, the ability that as Indigenous people, we worked across border as well there before for many ages. And business is about relationships. And for me, it was number one, was about building more relationships that you don't really understand where they could go and what they can grow to. And as a small business, reaching out into other markets and other places is creating more impact for what we do. We want to expand how much we can change people's lives from what we provide and understanding what other people's situations are across the board. It creates a space for business to inspire you, to get information from other people, to understand what their worldview is. And I think spaces like this breed that and also breed innovation. And, when we stop having those conversations and we have them behind closed doors, innovation stops, growing stops, understanding other people stops. So it's just about finding that hub and resources that are available to us that we don't really know until we reach out to other people and start talking about what we're doing, how we're moving, and getting people on board with that purpose, and what they want to share and help you accomplish. So that was really main key for that.
Well, that's great. Well, congratulations again, Logan and David, on graduating from the cohort. I understand the cohort ran from January to March, and it was a 12-week program, quite intensive, quite well laid out. So with all of the entrepreneurs, Indigenous entrepreneurs that are on the call today, what would be some of the advice that you give them as to what they might want to look for? What were the key elements in the program that you think added the value that they should really be seeking in this kind of opportunity? So let me go back to you, David, and let you start.
Yeah, I think a lot of the key elements I sort of mentioned before, like, I think the real intentional part was really reflecting on yourself as an entrepreneur in the business. So you have to really be intentional with your time and the outcomes you're looking for. Get them down on paper and assess those more closely. Does participating in an opportunity like this make sense for you? What state is your business in? Like we all know, running a business takes a lot of resources. Among them, a limited and non-renewable one is your time. So assess what is the opportunity gained by participating? And just as importantly, if not more, what is the opportunity cost in participating in this accelerator? I'm going to be very open and transparent. As much as we got out of this, and I would do this accelerator again in a second, and actually have been bugging Diane and Nico to let me into the next cohort and maybe build a second level here. But as much as I got out of it, and don't regret it, and I would do it over and over, I always have that, I wish I had just devoted a little bit more time, because you would have got so much more out of it. And in managing resources and looking to export, as entrepreneurs, we have to be responsible to those that we support and looking for that growth. So I went through an exercise where I actually just wrote down, okay, we don't have the resources for a team to focus on export and what we're going. But I actually wrote down, what does my team look like that is outside of Animikii? And so I wrote down Nico, I wrote down Diane, I wrote down trade commissioners. And when I started to build that, for those that are Canadian entrepreneurs, there's EDC. And there are people there looking to support. And once I started writing that list out, I started to realize there are a lot of supports. and that there are a lot of people I can talk to, and I should start building those relationships. And then I realized, we can go in, that the risk that is taken is measured, and that there are people we can talk to, so that we're not alone in looking to access cross-border trade and opportunities, that there are supports there. So I think if you were to ask me, I'd always say to entrepreneurs, go for it. What do you have to lose? And then at the same time, do some quick assessment. Will you get as much out of it, and what stage of business that you're in?
Good tips there, David. And then just give us a sense, like how many folks from your organization were actually involved in the accelerator?
Just myself. Myself and the CEO were to be, but then we had to, because we're so busy, we're raising our Series A, and we've got more work than we can handle. We had to be very strategic in where that is. And as I drive business development expansion, and it was an audacious move by Animikii to hire a Indigenous person from somewhere else in the world, but it was a conscious one, that we are going global, and that export was there. And it was a key factor to why I'm in this role. And I probably should mention too, I'd spent 5 years at a global technology company, Shopify. So we had to be very smart around how we had to target our resource allocation and the outcomes we were looking for. But right. It would have been great if we had at least another 2 or 3, for sure.
Yeah, hence your comment about wishing that there was more time and more resources available there on your side. Logan, maybe I can ask you, like, as you went through the program, what might be the things that you might share with other entrepreneurs who'd be interested in this program?
Yeah, when starting out, it's definitely an assessment of like what you can give into it. I think the more you give into it, the more that you will get out of it, and developing what those targets are, like, in what stage of business. Maybe it's just exactly like getting started, and that's usually the hardest part, is understanding what's available to you as an entrepreneur, and where do you start? You have a product in mind, but you never incorporate it or whatever. But so it's really understanding what you want to get out of it at the very beginning, and then dedicating yourself. I think a group like this offers an excellent opportunity to be accountable when you show up and kind of check in and see what you got, and be able to check off that list as how you move through it. Everybody there wants to help, and as much as like all the instructors were there as key resources, I mean, David and I now have a connection, and we're able to reach out to each other, because I think as much as these resources of where you can maybe find financing or learn understanding of how to capital fundraise, or other business strategy or business models, it's nice to have colleagues that you can call on and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. What's your take? What's your feedback? And I think, once again, back to relationships, it's an opportunity to build more of those, where as entrepreneurs we can bond together, create a better future for everyone. And we all need support. Entrepreneurs need it too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thanks, Logan and David. So, as you both said, initiatives like this don't just happen. They happen because there's a willingness on the part of some leaders to pull together the resources necessary to bring this to market. And so maybe I can turn the next set of questions to Nico and to Diane, because ultimately, this is an example of the kinds of things that groups like yours can put together to support entrepreneurs. And what more can be done around this sort of thing? Now that you've had the opportunity to do this program, what might be the advice that you'd have for other stakeholders in terms of scaling up this sort of initiative and how it might support entrepreneurs going forward? Diane, let's start with you.
I would say one of the most important things that would be helpful for the participants and for the success of any future accelerators is really the openness of businesses in the U.S., since we are talking about expanding into the U.S. So U.S. businesses being open to partner and explore opportunities to collaborate with the Canadian businesses. I think that's the biggest opportunity for the entrepreneurs and the business owners to learn, to understand what it takes to do business with a U.S. company, and explore the opportunities of getting either product or services or workforce dealing with the border issues, because I think that the greater collaboration we wind up having with cross-border businesses, the better chance we will have of minimizing those border issues going forward, because that's a huge learning curve, I think, for all small businesses, but there's additional issues that can be present for the Indigenous individuals because of the potential opportunities for doing business in the U.S. that still take a lot of work to make happen. And so I think having knowledgeable individuals and having businesses that are open to talking and exploring partnerships would be the one biggest help that we could make.
Thanks, Diane. There's a lot to unpack there about the power of networks and how you overcome friction in the system. Maybe before I turn to Nico, I just want to let the audience know that we're going to welcome your questions. There is an opportunity to kind of participate by asking your questions. Emily, help me out here. Is it in the Q&A function or in the chat that you'd like the questions?
In the Q&A function would be great.
All right. So just queue up your questions and we'd be happy to have the panel answer them as we go. So let me just turn to Nico now, because obviously from your perch on the province of BC, you know, there's a number of stakeholders that you can rally around in support of these sorts of things. But what do you think, what are the other things that stakeholders can do to support entrepreneurs in pursuing cross-border market opportunities?
Well, that's actually a great question, you know, and picking on what Diane was saying, I believe that building that network of partnerships with local businesses, both in BC and in the US, is essential to take this to the next level. Like, look, I really believe that the Cascadia Innovation Corridor is one of the most influential business regions in the whole world. We have like giants like Amazon, Microsoft here that are also interested in supporting initiatives related to Indigenous entrepreneurs, right? So for us, a clear next step is to continue building that network of strategic partnerships. Like, for example, I remember last year at RES, Amazon had sent a representative that was focused in buying and sourcing products from Indigenous owned companies, right? So we want to strengthen that that kind of connection, because sometimes, believe it or not, it's a matter of like sharing the information, knowing like what person to talk to within an organization. You know, Amazon, Microsoft, these are giant companies, and sometimes you need like an internal ambassador to help you move things forward within those organizations, right? So that's the kind of thing that stakeholders can do, like increase communication to make sure that, as Indra Nui says, I really like what she says about this, to make connections that are not evident, right? I think it's all about making connections that are not evident, and well, that's when you can make the magic happen.
So that's great. Yeah, no, there's a super important role in wayfinding, the work that you guys do to ensure that people find the right opportunities. So let me just turn now. We have a question from our participants here. I think it's a great one. I'm curious what surprised David and Logan most about looking into entering the US market. And are there any unexpected differences or roadblocks that you encountered? That's a good question, I think, for all entrepreneurs, but in particular, David, maybe you're nodding your head, so clearly there might have been some things that you noted.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that we noticed, or that I noticed in particular. You know, like we serve a lot of Indigenous and therefore Native American communities and organizations. What was surprising and not surprising at the same time was the lack of good data out there to make informed decisions about within the industry and within the Native American landscape. So that was difficult in terms of like, where do we invest our time? Where is best for us to start? And how do we build traction there and building connection? Another thing that surprised me was how well developed the relationships between Native American tribal entities and companies and organizations with government and procurement and accessing projects was already well developed and generations old in some cases. You know, like I think Nico talked about the Reservation Economic Summit in Las Vegas that is every year, a key driver and the largest I've ever seen of its kind. Everything from Boeing through to Amazon, through to small entrepreneurs, happening every year, and we attended that for 2 years. And just the scale of the economy, the Native American economy, is just huge in terms of the business and the communities and the work that they're doing and the innovation. Like I would say that not so much a surprise. I see the same in Canada, like entrepreneurs, born from the get-go, resilient, fantastic and successful. And I found the same in Native American communities. In terms of innovation, technology in areas that, as Nico mentioned before, isn't typically seen, it's all there, and it's amazing and vibrant. So it's so exciting to be a part of the North America, as we'll say, Turtle Island landscape as an Indigenous entrepreneur. And more of those people who are watching will see this come through. It's just not as widely spoken about or seen, but they will be key drivers in all industries, and in technology as well. So yeah, it was surprising and not surprising, because we see similar globally as well.
That's great to understand, David. How about you, Logan? What did you note were some of the key differences, and maybe not surprises, but things that you saw different between the US and what you've been doing in Canada?
Well, what surprised me actually first was that it was surprising how easy actually exporting or moving into the United States could be and is, as long as you get connected with the right people to help you. If it's, you know, tax law or whatever, then you could talk to a lawyer. If it's customs or exporting, then it's a customs broker, and they can basically answer all your questions. And I was also surprised at how many resources both sides of the border there are to support trade. You know, even if you are a Canadian business, how many, you know, I just spoke with the economic development of Central Oregon this morning, and, you know, their resources are not just for American companies, they're for any company that's following their directives. So it was surprised me how many people are open to helping, all the resources that are available, you know, talking to the right people, how easy it can be. Roadblocks, I mean, it's industry specific, I would say. For me, it was, you know, regulatory things, bringing a building that people are going to live in into different states or counties, land use things. So there's definitely research to do in regards to that. In terms of data, you know, it's again, once finding the right people to talk to, you don't always need to go and do it all yourself. There's economists that might have done that work, and, you know, you just got to find them and get your questions out to the network. And, you know, like I said, people are really out there to help.
Actually, I have one thing on roadblocker or a blocker that I would like to mention. And that would probably be, I'd be remiss to not mention it, but one of the differences I saw between Canada and the US, and it's particularly for Indigenous entrepreneurs that may be listening, was this different stage of truth and reconciliation where the countries are at. So, you know, within Canada,
Interesting.
You know,
and what was the main difference that you saw there?
Making a lot of moves towards that. And so working within the US, there's less traction and movement there. So you will have to spend more time building advocacy, educating, and bringing in stakeholders around that. But it is a tangible difference in working within the US. Really
interesting. I have another question from the Q&A. Could Diane tell us more about opportunities to engage with the Northwest Innovation Resource Center? It sounds like a cool resource. What else do you do outside of the accelerator program?
Oh my, okay. So it's great to hear the interest in it. So there are some other programs that we do. We have an annual Blue Tech Clean Tech Innovation Cohort, which is a 10-week cohort that happens every fall in partnership with Maritime Blue and Clean Tech Alliance to help early stage entrepreneurs with validating their ideas and moving forward with innovations that are in the clean tech or the maritime sustainability industry. We have quite a bit of one-on-one advising that we do for individuals, but we also have a physical innovation center that's located in Everett. Our headquarters office is in Bellingham, but we have an office in Everett, which has incubator space for individuals and co-working space and informational sessions that we do. But in addition to that, we are now building out 2 more innovation centers along the I-5 corridor. So we will have Everett, we will have North Snohomish County and Arlington. We'll have one in Skagit County in just east of I-5. We haven't located the location in Bellingham yet, but we'll have one there, which gives us a network of innovation of 4 innovation centers along the I-5 corridor, which will have prototyping workshops for people, entrepreneurs, to build their prototypes, whether that's from circuitry, AR, VR, electronics, or whether it's manufacturing type of equipment. And then entrepreneurs can treat all 4 innovation centers as a whole and pick and choose or use all of them, so that, and the primary objective of all of that is to really build the resources that lie between Seattle and the Canadian border to help all the innovators in that area be much more successful, have the resources that they need to let the region blossom as we know it can. So I'm happy to talk one-on-one with anybody that would like more additional information on that.
That's great to hear about the portfolio of offerings that you've got, Diane, and congratulations on opening all those centers.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one last question before I turn it back to Emily. And I think this question is directed to me. How does the digital supercluster support cross-border opportunities for tech companies and entrepreneurs? So it's been a little over a year since I left the digital supercluster, but what I can say is that the intention is to support Canadian entrepreneurs to kind of work with businesses, not only just in Canada, but across the world. So, you know, in effect, I think depending on the program stream, there's opportunities to do joint collaborative R&D projects in a variety of different tracks, primarily with a digital underpinning to it. And it can work with businesses and customers in the US as part of that whole thing. The funding restrictions is really geared towards Canadian incorporated companies, but nevertheless, there's still support for these consortiums overall in order to get those kind of projects underway. So hopefully that answers your questions there. And maybe with that, Emily, before we turn it back to you, I'd like to turn to the panel and the final wrap up and just ask each of you if there's one key takeaway that you would like to leave the audience with today. What might that be? And I'm going to start, David, with you.
Oh, Bill, I was hoping you weren't going to say me, but one key takeaway. I would say for everyone here that is listening, is really look into the history of the Native American and Indigenous people around you. Through knowing this history and understanding where they've come from, how they did trade, how they did innovation, is really going to lead into the future of the Cascadia corridor. And bringing yourselves into relationship with them is going to be a key driver to the success of this Cascadia Innovation Corridor, as is it's a key driver to the global innovation that is happening.
Thanks, David. Well said. Logan.
One key takeaway. If there's an idea that you've been pondering and you're wondering about what that next step is, reach out to the Cascadia Innovation Center. Take that first step. Life is a journey, business is a journey, and it just starts with one step at a time. And eventually, before you know it, your dream will be a reality.
Great. Thanks, Logan. Diane.
So I would say for me, the biggest takeaway was getting a very good understanding and just innate feeling about
Thanks, Diane. And Nico, final word to you.
Great. Well, if there's one thing I'd like attendees to remember today is that when we design these kind of programs, the spirit with which we design it is not to build capacity, not to help the participants to build capacities just for the sake of building capacities, but to translate what they learn in the program into concrete opportunities that then translate into concrete deals, into concrete dollars in their bank accounts. Because at the end of the day, those are the ones that keeps the light on and that keep the business running. And that's what we want to support from our office here. We're a results-oriented organization, and I think it's important to say this because today there's a ton of free resources that you can learn from online about how to start a company and how to fundraise. But what makes a difference is the relationships that you create in the process, how those relationships then bring concrete opportunities. And that's the kind of special mix that we want to create with these programs and the ones that we will be executing in the future. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
And there you have it, folks. Words of wisdom from our esteemed panelists today. I want to take this opportunity to thank them all. And I want to hand it back to Emily for the final words.
Thank you, Bill. And thank you again to all of our panelists and Bill for moderating. This was a great discussion and appreciate you all being here. I'm just going to share one page here that has our panelists' contact information in case you liked what you heard about opportunities through the Northwest Innovation Resource Center, or you want to get in touch with David or Logan about their businesses. Thank you all again for participating in the webinar. This is just our first of several planned Cascadia Innovation Corridor webinars this year, so please stay tuned for additional information about those webinars. And then our sort of flagship convening as a convening organization is our annual conference, which is taking place November 18th to 19th in Portland, Oregon for the first time this year. We're excited to be heading a little farther south and meeting in Portland in November. And that conference will be focused on affordable housing. I know top of mind for a lot of people. So please reach out for more information if you would like to get involved. And thank you all again. That concludes our webinar.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend.